friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark,
And I'm Midge Munster.
and we have talked a lot about how inspiration for this podcast can come from anywhere. Um, and I do not go on Pinterest a lot these days because the site is overrun with AI images and ads,
Mhm.
and I don't care to see either of those things. But I did do a little quick browse the other day, and I was greeted with a photo that actually I will send this to you, Midge.
Okay.
Um, I have sent it via Messenger.
Oh.
So what Midge is looking at right now is a photo of the actress Jean Tierney, posed with several disembodied women's heads, fully painted in glamour makeup.
Yes.
Uh, so this is entitled Jean Tierney with Portrait Masks, photographed by Horst P. Horst for Vogue in 1940. But as I looked at this picture, I was like, I should talk about death masks.
Mhm.
So for this episode, I read two great articles. One was The Curious and Gruesome Art of Human Death Masks by Nick Glass, as well as The Lost Art of the Death Mask by Zaria Gorvet. So what is a death mask? So this is a cast or impression that is made of a deceased person's face. They do actually call making a cast of a living person a life mask. So
Oh,
it's just a straightforward kind of thing. Have you ever had a life mask made, Midge?
I have, yes. I don't fully remember. I'm assuming it was theater school.
Yeah.
I don't fully remember when, but I remember very vividly having the like straws in my nose and having
hmm
the goop on the face.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like it's very much a theater thing, or
Yeah.
I have also had a life mask made. This was like a an iconic project in middle school art at my
Mm.
school. It was like the thing that like every year they would do a project where you made a life mask and then like mounted it on a canvas and then like
Oh,
did
okay.
whatever you wanted to do, like a painting or something. Like, some people would turn the mask into their own face, or some people would do like a full like cloudscape over the entire thing, like even on the face. So this was the wonders of middle school art. You have lots of stuff going on. But yes, as Mitch says, today, if you're making a life mask, you would grease up your face so it doesn't nothing sticks to it. And
Lots
there are
of
a
Vaseline
couple.
in the brows.
Yep, definitely anything brows, anything with hair that you do not want yanked off. You gotta slick those up. And there are a few like different methods. What we did was like strips of plaster gauze, like
Yeah, that's what we
plaster
did. That's
bandages. I think is kind of
mhm.
like the easiest way to do it. Layer over the face until they harden, and then once it dries, the resultant mold can be removed and then filled with plaster or clay to make a cast of your face. Uh, so, portrait masks of the dead have been present way back throughout history. I would say, like, the most iconic is probably King Tut's funeral mask. We've all seen, that beautiful gold face. But that is a sculpture and, not like an actual mold of his face. And that
Mhm.
was really more common for, the longest kind of historical period of time, is, you might make a mask or a face covering. There are, of course, a lot of like traditions that involve like covering the dead's face as part of their funeral rites. But the practice of actually molding your face really came into prominence in ancient Rome. The Romans, always up to something,
Classically up to something.
classically up to something. So it was the kind of when if you were part of an elite household, the important man, like the leader, the head of the household, would have a imago or image made of them that was like a super detailed sculpt of their face, and that would be kept on display or stored somewhere special, like in the home, as kind of like a memorial. And then apparently, there is some reference to that at family funerals, like people would wear the masks of like past ancestors to like symbolize the family line and
Oh
stuff.
boy.
Pretty
Mhm.
cool. So these were described as being extremely accurate. There is no like actual detail about whether they were taken from a person's face directly. It sounds like they were generally, if they were like a cast, it would have been a life mask that was done while the person was kind of in their prime.
Mhm.
So generally not after death. But you know, when rich people start a trend, eventually us regular folks are like, we got to get in on this.
That's what Reagan meant by the trickle down effect, right?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
that death mask will trickle down
Yeah, that's what I thought,
through
yeah.
society.
This is what he
Yeah.
was referring to as death masks.
So eventually, the lower classes in Rome started using wax to make impressions of their dead loved one's face to use for face casts and creating these true death masks. So unlike this like bougie version where you like have a special cabinet in your house with all of your family's masks in it, it seemed like it was more common for the mask to be buried with the body. So it
Hmm,
was kind of like part of a burial procedure. The other interesting thing is that there are casts like this that were made of women and children, whereas the fancy version is like men only. So it's
sure.
definitely kind of a different vibe than like this traditional family honor type of thing.
Well, and so are they using the wax to then make, like, a plaster, or is it just the wax? Because 'Cause I'm like, that's also not very it's not made for long-term use if
Yes.
it's wax.
Yeah, yeah. So they do make them plaster from the wax. I think
Oh, okay, okay.
there's like one or two impressions that they think might be like wax impressions, but like you said, obviously those did not last over
Sustain the
time.
yeah.
But there are these are the ones that we have are the ones that are in tombs generally that were
Gotcha.
buried with someone. So this trend does like eventually kind of fade out, and as time goes on, death masks are generally being made of like kings and notable people, primarily as like a reference tool for sculptures and portraits, because
Mm,
obviously you could not take a picture of someone
sure,
in
sure.
the Middle Ages or the Renaissance or any of
Because
those
they couldn't
times.
afford cameras, right?
Exactly.
Right,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So they would make a death mask, and then going forward, you would be like, "Oh, sweet, let's pull that guy out of the drawer and make another Henry VIII or whatever." So,
Wild.
and because these were like a reference material, we do have a lot of these like still kept in museum collections because you
Sure.
would kind of like be like, "Yep, this is an important record of what this person's face was."
Yeah, and not buried with them then.
Yes, yes. So not buried with them. The oldest supposed death mask that we have is of Dante's
Yeah.
Inferno. Um,
Famously of his
Famously
Inferno.
of his own Inferno. There is some question about whether that is legit. But you got other notable folks. You got Beethoven, Napoleon, Chopin, Voltaire, Tesla, all
Ooh,
have death masks made.
I don't know
So,
why, but when you brought that up, my first thought was Napoleon.
yep.
I was like, "I just know he had one."
Oh yeah. There was actually so one of the articles kind of used the framing of Napoleon's death mask getting made, and I didn't put a whole lot of it into this episode, but it
Mhm.
was like it sounds like kind of it was wacky shenanigans because he died in exile. So
Right.
people were like, fuck, where do we get the stuff to make a death mask? And they were like running around, and they apparently ended up like they couldn't get enough plaster in time because obviously they're trying to cast it before the body proceeds
Decomposes, right?
in its process, and apparently they ended up like grinding up a bunch of plaster figurines
Oh
to
my
use
gosh.
for them to make the mask. So it was
Wow.
kind of a little wacky adventure being like shit, we got to get this death mask.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. So the next kind of big surge and transformation of the death mask comes in the 18th century as it gets tied to science. But
Whoa.
unfortunately, because it was the olden days, it was not good
It
science,
was it
but
was
in
bad
fact, bad
science.
science. So people start getting very into physiogeny. I don't know if that's how you say it, which is like the theory that a person's physical features indicate things about their character.
Yeah, this is, like, how we end up getting into, phrenology.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
mhm.
So I think that it is pretty
Spoiler alert,
easy.
everyone, there's racism involved.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you can
Big
see how this
spoilers.
would be problematic in a variety of ways.
Right, right.
I'm not diving too deep on this here, but Abby Cox has a really good video where she kind of talks about some of the modern trends of like face shape analysis that have like gone viral on TikTok are a retread of a lot of this very
Mhm.
old racist problematic concept.
Yeah.
But led to a big jump in like life masks being taken just because people in general wanted more casts of faces for them to analyze and study. But what did Victorians love?
Death
Mhm.
culture.
Death culture and murderers. So they took so many criminal casts, like pretty much anybody who like was executed for murder. They were like, well, gotta make a death mask of this guy. Gotta
Of
get that
course.
in there.
Obviously. Need
As
that.
yes, so some of you may remember our Victorian murder figurine episode.
Yep.
So it is not surprising that they were like, "Ooh, a print of a dead person's evil face? Love it."
Will imprint their evil for eternity.
Exactly. But probably the most famous death mask is not, well, question mark, is not of anyone we believe to be evil. And this is La Inconnue de la Seine, or the Unknown Woman of the Seine. So the story goes that in the 1880s, the body of a young woman was pulled out of the Seine in Paris and sent to the morgue, where it was customary to put unknown bodies on display, theoretically to try to get them identified, but
Sure.
mostly it sounds like people were just like, let's go look at some dead bodies.
Yeah, mostly for gawking, yeah.
Mostly for gawking. And supposedly, a mortuary worker was so struck by her beauty and her peaceful expression that he ordered a death mask made of her, which creepy, real creepy, dude.
Yeah, what you need that for?
What you need that for, sir?
Mhm.
Hmm. So something that I was familiar with this story. Are you familiar with this story,
I'm
Midge?
not actually, which is
Ooh.
surprising.
All right. Yeah. There's a wow twist coming for you then. So
Ruh-roh raggy. Okay.
so before we get into that, this story may not be true. There has been a lot of discourse over the years on whether or not this person drowned or is even dead. Kind of just because of how full like her features look. If you
Mm.
do look at death masks, you can definitely see that there is obviously like a slackness to them, and that's just like Isaac Newton who was laying in his deathbed and not someone who like was in a river for multiple days
Right,
potentially.
right.
Apparently some guy who like worked with making the replicas said that he heard that it was like a cast from a woman who died of tuberculosis. There have also been random rumors that this was like the daughter or the mistress of some mask producing person. But whoever this woman behind the mask is, she fascinated people. Replicas of the mask became extremely popular as home decor in Paris and kind of spreading throughout. There was someone, this I found this pretty gross. A guy was talking about how like I don't know where his sources were, but someone wrote about how like the German women of the time were inspired by this, and he was like, oh, she was like the Bridget Bardot, the like erotic inspiration. And I'm like, this is a
Ye she's
dead
dead.
person, guy.
Yeah, what?
What the fuck? What?
Hate that.
Don't like that. But she gets referenced in a lot of literary works. The mask does, and most famously, this
Uh-oh.
mask was used as the face on the CPR training dummy Resusci Ann or Rescue Annie. Um,
Why?
Yep. So this is why I would say she's most famous because every so often it goes viral, that the CPR training dummy face is based off of this mystery dead woman.
Aren't
Um,
CPR training dummies, like, famously masculine?
well, this was like, I think this was the first one, or it
Okay.
was definitely an early one. So this was created by a Norwegian toy maker in 1958. So because he was experienced with working with those kind of like soft plastics.
Mhm.
That became it. And supposedly he remembered his grandparents having this La Canoe mask in their house and was like, oh, this is perfect. And here, here you are, Midge. He picked this because he thought male trainees would be reluctant to give CPR to a male dummy.
Yeah. Can't drink out
Yeah.
of a straw, that's gay.
It's gay. Fellas, is it
It's
gay to
gay
give
to do
CPR to a
CPR.
plastic man? Um, so yes.
Also, the, like, inverse of that statement is, like, just as bad, if not worse. They're like, "Oh, but they'll be more likely to
Right?
wanna put their mouth on a fake dead woman."
Right. And so
What?
because of this, she sometimes referred to as quote the most kissed face in the world,
Hate it.
which is disgusting.
Hate
If
that.
this is
Hate that
actually
for
some
her.
random dead woman, and also it's just kind of gross to equate giving someone CPR with kissing in general. Like,
I guess it is, like, called the kiss of life, so
yeah,
I
but
get
I
what
think
they're
that
like,
that's a bad
"Ugh,
thing. I
ugh."
think that's bad, actually.
I
Um,
feel so violated for this woman, like,
mhm,
just on so many levels, like, A, don't make a mask of my face after I'm found don't put me on display after I'm found drowned in a river,
right.
and, like, probably based on historical, notions of time, probably drowned by someone in a river if that's how she went. Like, and then prop me up like Weekend at Bernie's, take an unapproved mask of my face because you wanna what, fuck me? I hate this.
Yeah,
I'm mad. Thank you for
yeah.
coming to my TED Talk.
I'm sorry, bitch. I definitely thought you would like, I was sitting here being like, "All right, everyone is, like, waiting to be like, when's she gonna talk about the CPR dummy?"
Oh my god. I'm really shocked because, like, for those of you who may not know, I spent a very long time in, like, French history classes and things. This is, like, a large part of my lore, and so I'm
Mhm.
really shocked I didn't know this. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so I'm so upset. Okay, anyway.
Anyway, yeah, so really, as with many things with the rise of photography, the need for death masks kind of faded. Today, face casts, as we talked about, are mostly done for artistic purposes, for theater or middle school art projects, or so you can paint a bunch of ladies for Gene Tierney to take a picture with. Um, there is this was featured in one of the articles I read. There's a sculptor in the UK named Nick Reynolds who has a specialty in death masks.
Hmm.
So he is actually the son of the guy who masterminded the Great Train Robbery.
Oh. Okay.
Casually, and so he did an art show in the 90s where he took life masks of his father and a bunch of other, like, criminals. It was called Con to Icon, which sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then after his father died, he did a death mask of him and has kind of continued to do so, like, on request. He did a death mask of Peter O'Toole after he passed away, who apparently, according to Reynolds, his daughter asked Peter if that would be okay, and he said, "I don't care, I'll be dead." So,
Period.
period. I'm like, all right, Peter O'Toole and I have pretty similar outlooks
And
on
then
that.
there's me raging about
Well, but see, they of me, they asked me about it,
well,
so it's fine.
yeah, that
I wouldn't want. So that was my question. Would you want a death mask made?
um, I don't know why, but this in particular kind of makes me feel a little squeamish. I don't
Sure.
know why. So maybe not. I guess because there would have to be really, like, strong parameters set up about what it would be able to be used for.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
like,
feel like there's too many ways that somebody could be a freaking weirdo about this.
yeah, like, I definitely would not want one for, like, public consumption. Like, I wouldn't wanna be sold, and that was actually one of the other things from the Napoleon story is they were like, "Oh, yeah, and, presumably Napoleon was like, 'Ah, yes, my death match will be made and everyone will honor me,' and then the guy who made it, like, made all these, like, super cheap copies, and, like, everyone had, like, their own little Napoleon face
They
at home."
they had the Ben Cooper
Yeah,
Napoleon
they had the
mask.
Vancouver Napoleon mask. So yeah, like I'm intrigued by kind of like the artistic side of it. I do
Yeah.
feel like I probably just want to do it more in the fancy ancient Roman style. And I'm like, just take like a life mask of me in my best
Right.
moments, and then you can pull it out at my funeral and be like, whoa, look
This
how
is what
great
she
she
looked
was.
like. Yeah. That's yeah, I think I'd be more but also as far as, like, not for public consumption, right? Like, okay, so let's say I stay the way I am right now, I have no children. At some point, the people who are directly related to me are gone.
Yeah,
What happens to the death mask? You know, like, at some point, that's getting, like, put in an estate sale or,
this
like,
is true.
auctioned or something that I don't think I'm feeling great about. So I think that's a hard pass for me. Unless you're gonna if you're gonna bury it with me, fine, but also I don't need a copy of I know what I look like, you know?
What if we just get famous enough that they want our death mask in the museum?
We have cameras. You know what I look like. Yeah,
That's
no.
fair.
Or we can be buried with each other's death masks.
Okay, yeah. That makes more
In
sense.
in case I'm looking for your, like, ghost in the afterlife and I
Oh, yeah.
forget what you look like for a second, I can glance down in my hand and be like, "Oh, right, right."
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. Yeah, that is my history of death masks. They're very intriguing because I wasn't 100% sure when I started, like kind of the what the distinction between like a death mask and like a funerary mask
Mhm.
is. And so just kind of like the fact that it's an actual cast of someone's face makes more sense. But it was definitely I do like the creative use of them for reference before photographs.
Yeah, that's very
That was
cool.
smart.
And I
And
mean,
it
I
it
guess this is kind of the OG postmortem photography,
yes.
uh, which that doesn't eke me out. I don't know why. I think it's the idea of, like, somebody actually physically tampering with my body that makes me kinda like,
Yeah,
"Ooh,
it
you're
definitely
gonna
is.
put you're gonna put slime on my face
It is
when
definitely
I've
more
already been through so much?"
handling of
Yeah.
the dead body.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know about that. And I've also what's that, what's the meme where it's like, "My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined." I am going to be thinking about this poor woman in the river for the rest of the week.
Oh,
I
I
can't believe
know.
you've done
I
this.
can't believe I'm sorry. Sometimes on our spooky podcast, we end up the spook gets too real.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
that's
it
just
it gets you a little
crazy.
existential spooking.
I think also just, like, the cruel joke of her being on, like, a CPR dummy, which is to save people
Right? Yeah,
that were
and sh
drowning. It's a little too meta, I don't care for that. Uh,
Oh gosh. Well, friends, let us know what you think. Have you ever had a life mask made? Would you want a death mask of yourself? Sound off and let us know. We would love to hear about it. Almost as much as we would love to hear about it if you're enjoying the show. It helps us out a lot if you can leave positive reviews and tell your friends. I do believe Midge has a review to read for us today.
I do. We have our first new review in a while on Apple Podcasts.
Mm,
This is a 5-star from Eve Rochelle, titled in all caps, "These are my people."
yes.
I came here from Midge's YouTube page, and I absolutely love this podcast. I already loved Midge from her channel, and I quickly fell in love with Penny too after listening to a couple episodes. I love these women's humor and style of podcasting. It is such a joy to share a love of spooky things year round, and I look forward to every episode. In the most dramatic way possible, this podcast makes me feel like life is worth living. 10 out of 10.
Oh, thank you.
I love a little drama.
Definitely. I'm always relieved because I know that a lot of people come from your YouTube channel and then they're like, "Oh yeah, this girl's here too."
And with him always is Garth. No. I feel like I'm always more nervous, vice versa. I'm like, Penny's so educated and knows what she's talking about, and also I'm here.
It's the power of balance, my friend.
Mhm. That's
All
true.
right. All right. All right. If you would like to keep up with our show, you can follow the pod on Instagram at Ghouls Night In Pod. And if you are looking for me, you can find me at Penny Snark.
And I am all over the web at Midge Munster.
And until next time,
Good.
goodbye.